and you've made it through week 1 of this course. So congratulations for those of you who have made it almost through week 1 of this course. So tonight ends week 1 of this course, and so do not forget by tonight 11:59 you have your quiz due on the introduction chapter. So a lot of you reached out to me and said, I don't have the textbook. That's fine, whatever, you don't have the textbook, but you can still use the PowerPoints. And remember, I talked about this in the opening video, is that you can open the PowerPoints and there's notes under each slide that should be able to help you to answer the questions on the quiz. Now, that won't help you every week, but at least will help you through this week until you can get settled into the course. All right, so good job overall. Couple housekeeping items before we get started. Some of you need to go back and revisit these important documents here, which is directions for initial posts, directions for response posts, because some of you are missing the main elements of initial posts and response posts. So just briefly, I mean, this doesn't knock all the boxes, but I just want to tell you, number 1, no I statements in initial posts. Number 2, initial posts need to be at least 300 words. They have to contain sources that I have given you. Those sources have to be used in your post in a factual basis and then shown in MLA formatting at the end. The other thing is that you need to use paragraphs. There should be a clear beginning, middle, and end to your initial posts. Response posts, initial posts are always due by Wednesday, 11:59. Response posts are always due by Friday, 11:59. They need to be at least 200 words, agree, disagree, or why to a fellow classmate. Okay, so they're general rules. The other general rule is that there are 6 questions given under each forum. You are to pick one of those 6 questions, not all of them. Pick one of those 6 questions, but there's a little bit of a but you have to make sure that 6 students haven't already answered that question. So if you get in on Wednesday night at 10 o'clock and say, oh, I'm going to pick this question, you need to make sure that 6 other students haven't answered that question. If they have, then unfortunately you have to pick a different question. So yes, there are questions that may be easier to answer than other questions, and usually they go first, of course. So if you get in late, then guess what? You might have to prepare more to to develop a very good answer to a forum post questions. Okay, so make sure you plan ahead and plan for that. From this point forward, if more than 6 students answer that same forum post question, if you're the 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th person to answer it, you do not receive credit for your initial post. So please take heed. Now, I always, every semester, get a question from a student. Oh, well, I was typing mine up and then someone submitted. Nope. If you see that 5 people have already answered that forum post question, then maybe it's in your best interest not to pick that question. Pick the one that one person has answered. Okay, so make sure you plan ahead for forum posts. Okay, so last week we covered the introduction chapter. A couple takeaways from that: you want to make sure you address scientific, while we didn't do this in the forum post questions, this will show up on your midterm and your midterm exam. Make sure you understand the scientific method, why it's super important, why it helps to remove uncertainty. It does help to remove uncertainty, and the reason for that is we can repeat those processes, those experiments over and over and over again, and we get the same results. So that's why it's really important, because then it removes that uncertainty that we have about specific things. Why does this cancer always happen this way? Well, because we did a lot of studies and we found out that this gene is here and it's turned on by eating this type of food. And so that's really important for you to understand. Okay? Homeostasis is another really important concept that I want you to understand from the introduction session. Understand what a positive and a negative feedback loop is and what they bring about. So remember, in this class, positive feedback loops are really bad for the environment, and the reason for that is they keep exacerbating the situation. And in your textbook, they use the idea of clear cutting, and then the silt comes down, and then the silt enters the stream. So it just continually causes problems. A negative feedback loop actually tries to bring the environment back into some sort of stable environment. Together they work, positive and negative work together. But negative feedback loop, they give you the algae example in your textbook. So make sure you look over that and look at how that happens. And a negative feedback loop without human intervention is a good example of that, is a population explosion. Is normally the population will explode. there will be not enough food, the species will die, and then it will return back to a normal population of the species. So you want to take that into consideration when you're thinking about that. Now this week we have Tragedy of the Commons, and Tragedy of the Commons is a very, very intense session. It is super important. It's the crux of this entire semester. Everyone has to read this article, The Tragedy of the Commons by Garrett Hardin. Everyone has to read that article, and everyone has to use that article in your forum post. So if you've already made a forum post, you need to go back and edit it and repost it with the article Tragedy of the Commons by Garrett Hardin in it. The reason is this document explains to us what a shared resource is, what a shared space is. That is a commons, okay? And you'll see in my PowerPoint I give a description of what happened in the past and then what's to come. You cannot just use that PowerPoint. You have to read the article because my PowerPoint is very small, it's very limited. You need to read the article because Garrett Hardin does a really good job of explaining why technical solutions do not work. So shared spaces, air, water, land, it can even be a SEPTA bus, it could be a school classroom, it could be a park. All of these things are shared resources, shared by us. And what happens is we have this inherent need for greed that's in the human genome. And it tells us, I should use this for my short-term gain instead of thinking about the long-term interests of society. So it says to us, this inherent need for greed says, well, I should throw my garbage here because who cares? Because guess what? I'm winning, so my short-term greed is met, and I'm not worrying about the rest of society because they don't matter to me. And that's the issue. That's the crux of all of our issues. Now, Garrett Hardin talks about population in there, and he says to us, well, his example is population. So please do not think that while he uses population as an example throughout his entire article, that you can't substitute population, take it out, and put in air pollution, or put in water, or put in whatever. So Garrett Hardin says, well, the way that we solve these human need greed issues in the environment is we put in technical solutions. So we put on technical ways to solve that. Whether we've created the EPA, which is a technical solution. We use mutual corrosion, which is a technical solution. And you'll see what that is in the article. It's like parking meters and taxes and things like that. He says we put in welfare state. We put in all these technical solutions, but guess what? None of them seem to always work, and the reason for that is that they also need an extension in morality. We need to educate people why what you're doing affects everyone, not just you. Okay, so people who are driving around huge SUVs and huge trucks, well, yeah, it's great that you have this huge truck and you need to do that, but what are you're hurting a lot of people by doing that, and we need to educate them. Now, are we going to change everyone's mind? No. There's always going to be those people who say, well, it's my right to drive a truck. Well, yes, it is your right, but you also have to think about what your destruction is for society and what's going on with this. So there's a lot involved with Tragedy of the Commons. Mutual corrosion seems to be the best technical solution that works. Now, there's a lot of flaws to it, but it does sort of work. It prevents us from parking in spots. Now, there's always going to be people who rig the system or don't pay their parking tickets, but there's also a large amount of people who have ethics that or a moral code that will prevent them from doing things, right? Or maybe it's an incentive. I give you a tax break for driving a green car, or I give you a tax break for putting an energy efficient appliance in your home. So these are all of those technical solutions. Like an incentive is a technical solution that is put into place, and they seem to work. And the reason they work is because people don't feel like that freedom is taken away. The minute someone feels that a technical solution infringes upon their freedom, they seem to have backlash towards it, okay? And we'll talk about that in the population session, which was with the One China Child policy, was a technical solution to a population problem that definitely did not work out very well for China. And so there's a lot of situations with this. So that is what this whole article talks about, and you need to read it. It is a higher level reading document. It may require 1, 2, 3 reads, but you need to incorporate that into your posts this week. All of the posts relate to Tragedy of the Commons in some sort of way, shape, or form. So I want you to make sure that you read that article and bring it in. That's at least one of your sources. And then you have other sources here that you can bring in, but I I definitely need you to bring in that article into all of your forum posts this week. So I should say at least 2 sources from the information I've given you. That brings up another thing. I need you to use sources I've given you. And the reason for that is the fact that if you don't use sources I've given you, we call that trumping the conversation, meaning you're bringing in something that no one else has access to, and you're making statements on it, and everyone else is like, well, where is this from? I don't know if this is a valid source, or I don't know who created the data for this source. I want to make sure that everyone who has the information, it's right here in this course, and then they can make their educated opinion back to you on whether they agree, disagree, or why. Okay, so make sure you follow that. Other than that, most great week. Now, next week you don't have a quiz. You can see here you don't have a quiz, okay? But you do have this introduction quiz due this week, all right? I will check back in with you next week. My battery is about to die on my computer, so I need to run. But if you have any questions, feel free to reach out, and I look forward to starting this journey with you. Have a fantastic week.